Howdy, y'all, and welcome to another high-powered episode of the High Voltage Lab Show. I'm your host, Willie Snyder, coming to you live from the Mile High City in Denver, Colorado. I'm joined by James Stalcup, CEO and creator of this podcast, CEO of DeWalt Online Academy, and we have a special guest tonight, Reese Allen. Very happy to have you tonight, Reese. And she's coming from the PBH Hospital, job site where I work. So it's pretty awesome that we can have you on, Reese. One first question I want to ask you, just to kind of break the ice, is do you like to be called a journeyman wireman, or do you like to be called a journey person wire person?
Actually, I prefer Journey Wireman because that's what my fellow brothers go through. That's the credentials we aim for. It hasn't changed on door to Journey Person, so I'm going for what door requires me to have, which is a Journey Wireman license. And
All right.
I enjoy having that title actually.
All right. Well, I didn't want to, be insulting, but I just wanted to say, fellow journeyman wireman, of state of Colorado. So we both have the same credentials there
No,
when
no
it comes to
worries.
licensing.
No
But
worries at all.
it's a great honor to have you. And like I say, you could just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself as far as your experience in the field. I'm pretty sure everyone out there has been bored to death hearing me and James's stuff. So for
No
once
worries.
here.
I'm a second generation electrician. My father is an electrician also out of the state of Alabama. He's been doing electrical work for about 40 years. He got me started when I was around about 19 on a commercial job site. With him, I did probably my first 3 years of electrical work, discreetly with him through two buildings from start to finish. Um, After that, I kind of traveled a little bit. I worked with a couple of temp services just to get my knowledge furthered from outside the state of Alabama. So I ended up working on a couple of military bases and getting some troubleshooting knowledge and just furthering my craft. I ended up getting the opportunity to work or partner with a general contracting company that does work nationwide with small commercial retrofits. And through that, I was able to vastly grow my knowledge of electrical through doing various job sets with them and just going in, taking something and making it something else with the electrical that's given and what they wanted to get installed. So that was something that I enjoyed very much, as far as just the traveling, the every place being different, the every situation being different, and just figuring it out and learning and knowing, it was on me as the electrician to go in and make sure it was safe for the carpenters or the plumbers or whoever else went in behind me to do their job and come back in and make it safe so that they can operate and open the stores and pass those inspections. So that was something that kind of jumped my knowledge of the electrical trade a good chunk. And then
Nice.
I ended up in Colorado doing
Okay.
some service work back in 2016, and I liked it a lot, but I had a car accident outside of Anadarko Oil and Gas off of County Road 22 up here in Fort Collins, and it was real
Oh,
bad.
wow.
I ended up having to go back home, totaled the car, and I wasn't, when I got back home and realized the opportunities I had out here compared to going back home, I was like, I got to get back out here. I got to get back to
Right.
the experience, the money, the just the privileges that I don't have being, back home trying to do the same trade. So I got back out here and I eventually got my journeyman card. And once I did that, doors just opened for me, further.
What year did you get your license?
2020.
Okay. Did you have to go through any schooling to get your Colorado?
I did not.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
I started at the time that I took my test initially. The guidelines were that if you started prior to the year 2011,
Yep.
you did not have to have the 288 hours of schooling in order to qualify for the journeyman test. You just had to prove that you started as an apprentice prior to that. And I did have that paperwork with me when I came from Alabama, which they could verify. So when Dora verified it, it was just kind of that simple, really.
Okay. Yeah. So, what kind of stuff do you like doing more? Do you prefer the industrial? Because I know I worked with you over at one of the wastewater treatment plants, and that was a lot of fun working with that rigid. And it's funny because even like when you have that water contact, you have to use like a food grade. Like different kinds of stuff that's all food grade, so that if it won't contaminate the water when you're putting the conduit together and stuff like that. So I found that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was my first water treatment plant, and those small details was very interesting to learn. Because it's just something else to add to the knowledge. In those type of environments, you have to use those type of sealants just because you don't want to cross contaminate what they're already, flowing through those pipes with what we're trying to make sure that, outside of that, nothing else has happened. So it was a fun experience, definitely. Just to get the opportunity to pull the wire in that building was for me was everything. I got to learn a lot doing that.
So I didn't want to interrupt, but I was going to tell James a story. So they told me it was like my last day while I was at the shop, and I forgot my screwdriver on one of the lifts. So I told Reese, like, hey, can you go back and grab that screwdriver? I just didn't want nobody else to have it. And so she grabbed it. And then when we met up over at PVH, she gave me my screwdriver back. So that was pretty cool. Pretty cool little story.
Yeah, I kept on to it.
Yeah, you had it about 3 years, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's some tools I have longer than those 3 years I've had your screwdriver. So it was in good hands. I promise.
It's all good. So we're gonna go ahead and probably do the meme of the week, James.
Yep, I'll cue it up.
Yeah, that one's pretty funny. I actually stole that from, it's like a gas and oil meme, and it was real funny doing the gas and oil, and they like, oh man, I'm all hard, mom. I work 50, 60 hour shifts now, and I work 7/12s, but it was pretty funny. You work a lot of hours with the gas and oil stuff.
Oh yeah. Definitely. It was fun. It was fun times though. Fun times, definitely.
Yeah. And I know you were out there with the gas and oil with you were at COSIP or you were at Tallgrass?
I've been to Tallgrass site. That was the one most recently I was telling you about up in Colorado off of 85. And fun times.
Isn't that right by the Wyoming border?
Correct.
Okay. Because I was up there with Rolos up at Pierce.
Okay.
That's pretty up there too. It's right by the Wyoming border.
Winds up there are harsh, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Their wind socks a chain, James.
Well.
Yeah, it's pretty. It never stops blowing up there.
Ever.
So I guess we'll go ahead and roll the myth of the week. I want to thank everyone for participating this week. I had a great time, and I hit like 75,000, so that's pretty awesome.
All right.
It's time for Myth of the Week.
All right, so we had a really awesome myth this week. It was basically true or false if you require bushings for PVC terminal adapters with number 4 and larger. A lot of places, like I know there's places like Wisconsin and Phoenix where the inspectors don't require you to put bushings on for number 4 and larger on PVC. So they're basically saying that why would you put a plastic bushing with a plastic terminal adapter? And so I could kind of see their point, but at the same time, the way the code interpretation is, I know James got that note up at the top. It's really hard to see, but basically PVC terminal adapter is basically the same as any kind of other terminal adapter. It's basically threads that have a lock ring on it that need to have a rounded edge to be protected from physical damage. So you'll notice that 300.4G kind of ties in here. And I think, was it the 352.46, James? That was the other one, but that 352.46 basically says where the PVC enters the enclosure. So that's basically where you're just bringing a PVC in. So that would be where you're putting like your bell end on there or whatever. So they do reference the number 4 and larger. But I know what we do in our situation is we put it on any size PVC. We treat it just like rigid. So even if you have a 1/2 inch that comes into the enclosure, we still put that bell end on there and protect it from physical damage. You just always want to keep a nice, smooth, path on your wire. You don't want to damage it because you could get a hot and a ground that both get damaged and short to each other, even though you don't have a metallic wiring method.
Sure. And when you go over and you look at 304G, it's not ambiguous. It just says where raceways contain number 4 AWG or larger insulated conductors. And they just tell you that the fittings providing a smooth, rounded insulating surface, and you've got rounded edges. And it's just making sure that those number 4 or larger are not going to get damaged. And then if you go over and look at 342.46, 44.46, and 52.46, it talks about the bushings, and the informational note's going to refer you right back to 300.4G to tie that in. So all the information's there. I did go back and I did do some research on the manufacturers and stuff. There was nothing there. So I was like, well, we'll just follow what the code says here. There wasn't anything additional that I could find. So the answer to this myth of the week is true. You got to have confirmed a bushing or number 4 and larger.
Myth confirmed. So yeah, so this is pretty awesome, and there's a lot of people. I myself, when you start thinking about it, you're like, why does a plastic pipe have to have a plastic bushing? But it's just that whole thing that a lot of guys said when they're pulling wire, they're that wire could scrape going through that PVC, and it could short to itself just as bad as it could short to a metallic wiring method. So it was pretty interesting. But,
well, it doesn't matter. You got to have it.
I don't think I got you on it, Reese. I tried to get you on it. I don't think I got you on it.
Nah, I think I knew that one in particular. We actually went over that. My foreman went over that one probably the week before. So that one was actually pretty easy for me.
Nice. Well, I know that
we've had quite a few different myths on here. I've gone back and done some additional research that really lays it out.
I know that you guys have that neat and workmanlike manner. I know you guys have that neat and workmanlike manner hanging up in your cottage.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah, he blew that up like times 10 and put that right on the wall as you sit down every day.
But I got James last week on that because he didn't know that there was a code change, and the code changes must be installed in a a skillful, a professional and skillful manner. So I got him on that when he didn't know it. So
I guess he needed to do some research.
But if you want to start up your topic, James, we go ahead and get it rolling.
Yeah, let me start up the audio here.
This is pretty funny. I have to do this while James is fading out. So a lot of people spell my name wrong. So they always call me Bill Cinder. And it's just funny because, like, I don't know, like, it's just really funny. It's like, no, I'm not Bill Cinder. I'm Bill Snyder. But it's pretty funny. You just joke around about it.
Oh, word.
Yeah, but so basically what James wants to do is you can just kind of go over what questions you feel kind of like stumped you, because he's probably having bad internet or something. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
No
But
worries.
basically, when I took my NISAT 2 test, I actually failed the first time, and I took it as a blessing because I was like knew what to study, and I knew what was going to be on it. I knew what areas I was weak at, and I was able to go back in and just study and target those areas, and I crushed it the second time and passed that thing. So we know you're going to do that, but just basically you have.
Okay, you ready to start up again? Let's see if it's working now.
We already did the song. The song already played.
I think he freezing up on you, Bill.
Yeah, I guess so. But what happens is he gets his computer so full of code references that it just crashes on him because its brain is so full. So going back to that, it was just really awesome that I was able to kind of have that guideline where I say, you know what, I did not even know, like I showed you the other day about the resistors.
Right.
And I still got to send you that. I'll send you that graphic. But
no worries.
It's really cool because there's all these like different little sayings that people say, like whatever, like all the different like people like different things or something, and then that's how you remember the neutral goes on silver. And,
right. Okay, I know what you're saying. Like boy, for instance, brown, orange, yellow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you learn those like acronyms. So it was kind of cool for me to just go, you know what, that question kind of stumped me. I didn't even know what the colors are on the thing. And then like Danny, our fire alarm programmer today, he's like, oh, it's going to be purple, or it's going to be violet, brown, gold. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I know which resistor it is, but and I'm like, okay, cool. That's the 470K, and then I know each increment is 100 or 70, or, it's like 150, 20 or 150, 10, 2 bands. So it was cool that I was able to look at that resistor and know what value it was while I was up in the ceiling, so that kind of stuff is valuable when
it's
you're out on the field.
Definitely. I mean, especially to know it, just to have that knowledge, on the spot and not have to pull anything out to figure it out is always crucial, to the efficiency of our job. As journeymen, we want to be more efficient, and those little things kind of help and go and helps with that process.
Yeah, and we were just sitting here one night after the show, and James had this motor diagram sitting there, and I was like, dude, that motor diagram's not right. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, it's kind of right, but it just shows the pecker head getting hooked up, doesn't actually show the
There we
there
go.
you are.
I rebooted everything. I don't know what was going on.
Okay.
No worries.
But I was just telling her how we made up that motor pecker head and diagram, and it was just like it was accurate, and it was just in my head. So, and James has a lot of that motor stuff in his head, so that's what he's gonna do for the topic of the week. And you can just basically ask him any question you want or anything because I know we were talking about how you weren't supposed to see that slide, James. Where'd you get that?
I just was putting everything. I hadn't looked at it yet, but I should have left it up there so I could see what you're trying to trick me on this week.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you, dude.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and start the topic of the week audio, and then we'll start answering questions.
Okay. I actually don't mind hearing metal twice, so
No worries. Okay, I heard you were getting ready to take the Masters. Is that correct, Reese?
Yes, sir. I actually took it Tuesday.
Oh, you did. How'd you do?
Well, I did better than the previous time, but haven't quite passed it yet.
Okay, what'd you have problems on?
So my, I guess, biggest issue in the midst of taking the test is probably the motor calculations, the I'm not gonna say sizing, grounding electrodes and grounding conductors, but I want to say everything that kind of goes in around grounding and bonding. And in what this is, you tie into the concrete, and what instances you actually use the grounding electrodes over or tie. Let me just take it back. Grounding and bonding in general, I'm kind of just a little all over the place because I haven't had as much experience with doing it as I have in other aspects of the trade. So transformers would be another thing, and then electrical calculations as a whole, because what I do in the field doesn't require me necessarily to have to use calculations, because I mostly do everything practically off my experience. So
Okay. All right.
just
Well, we'll start with motors first. All right.
okay.
So let's look at. So I'll make up a problem here. Let's say that I have 460 volt, 50 horsepower, Design B squirrel cage motor, and I'm going to size, let's just say, an inverse time circuit breaker. Now, what's going to happen is where I always have everybody start is 240.4 G, because that's going to where you're going to start for overcurrent protection. And when you look at that section, it's going to say specific conductor application. And then you're going to come down, and then you're going to see it's going to talk about motor control circuit conductors and all of that. And then it's going to tell you to see Article 430, and it's going to tell you to look at all these parts. Okay.
So just a quick question for you, James, on the inverse time. They use the inverse time so that they don't get a false trip, or so that the fuse holds longer to keep the motor running.
Sure.
If it's not a true fault condition, that's the reason they do the inverse time, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Now, the cool thing is once you look at that section, and you go over and you look at Article 430, the first thing that you're going to start with, and always tell everybody this when they're doing calculations, a lot of times you need to start at the front of the chapter. So in this case, you would go look at 430.6A1. All right. Now, when you look at that, the heading is going to say table values. And in essence, you can read that whole thing, but I'll just sort of wrap it up for you so you understand.
No worries.
If you're going to take and you're going to size your conductors or overcurrent device, it's going to tell you to use the tables, and it'll say tables 430.247 through 250.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Now, so if I'm sizing the overcurrent protection device, we're doing a 3-phase 460 volt, 50 horsepower design B motor. I'm going to look over at table 430.250 at this point, because that's where you're going to pick the amperage up for a 3-phase motor. So
Correct.
when you go over and pick it up and you pick up the 460 volt column and you come down, pick up 50 horsepower, it's going to tell you the amperage for that motor is going to be 65 amps.
Correct.
All right.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
what I tell everybody to do here is right there at that table, you want to put down section 430.52C1. Now, the reason you're going to do that is because that's where you're going to go to get the percentage to size your overcurrent protection device. And when you go look at 430.52C1, the heading it's literally going to say this. It's going to say, in accordance with table 430.52. So right there, as you're looking at that section, right on the next page in the left-hand side of the page there, the top side, you're going to see table 430.52, and we have a squirrel cage motor. You come across, and for an inverse time circuit breaker, it's going to tell you to take it at 250%. Okay, now.
You're fantastic.
Now, what happens from here is when you look at that 430.52C1 and you read the language there, it says it shall not exceed the calculated value in table 430.52. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I would do is take the 65 amps times 250%, and that's going to give you roughly about 162.5 amps. So if I can exceed the calculated load, you can go back and look at this later, but you would look at table 240.6A for your standard ampere rating for your overcurrent devices. And the next size below that 162.5 amps is a 150 amp overcurrent device. You see that? Okay, now
240.6A, 240.6A.
Yeah,
6A. That's for your standard ampere ratings for your overcurrent devices.
Okay.
You get real familiar.
So we have James has a little thumb rule that he does, and if you're sizing it at 125%, you go to the next size up, and if it's anything over 125%, you go to the next size down.
Okay.
Now I will say this: there's only 2 spots that doesn't hold true in the code. One is for transformers, but it tells you to see note 1 and it says shall be permitted, so you can go up or down. But when you go look at phase conversion in 455.7B2, you have to protect for that phase conversion. It says to protect the conductor. So therefore, you're going to have to go up. You can't go down. Okay. That's a basic rule of thumb I teach when I'm doing it. Now, right after you look at that 430.52C1, if the motor doesn't start due to inrush currents, and they could ask you on this test, they could say, what is the minimum size, the next size, or maximum size? Now, if I look at exception 1 without doing any further calculation, it allows me to go up to the next standard size for that overcurrent device, which would be 175 amps. All right. Now, if it still won't start due to inrush currents, exception 2, in this case, we're doing an inverse time circuit breaker, so we're going to look at exception 2C, and it's going to tell you we're not over 100 amps, so it says I can take that 65 amps times 400%, and that's going to give you 260 amps. But once again, it tells you can exceed the calculated value. So the next size below that 260 amps is a 250 amp overcurrent device.
Okay. So,
All right.
okay. Yes, sir.
Now, if they ask you, we'll just stay with the same problem. If they want you to size the conductor, now what you're going to do, you're going to look at 430.22. And 430.22 is going to tell you to take that at 125%. Okay. So, and if you had multiple motors, you just take all the rest of the motors at 100%. But since we're doing one, you have to take it at 125%. So I'll take the 65 amps times 125%. That's roughly going to give you like 81.25 amps. So I would go over to size that. I would do it on the 75 C column in this case. And if I go look at table 310.16,
Number 4.
you're going to come down and it's going to tell you the next size above that 81.25 amps is 85 amps, which is a number 4 conductor. Now, what I always tell people, when you're studying, and that's one of the reasons a lot of people use our publications for journeyman and master exams, is because we take you step by step, just like I did, and all them sections, tables, and everything are listed under each step.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually go in and figure out and understand how to work that problem. Okay.
Okay.
Now ask me another question on motors. What do you want to know?
Now I'm curious. So, based off what I was studying last night, which I was going over full load ampacities and full load currents, and I know that the full load ampacity is normally protected by overload protection,
Mhm.
and the full load current is the over current protection that we just were sizing the grounding for, correct?
Right. So
So
when you're doing the overload protection, now you want to look at 430.6A2. And that's going to tell you right there to use the nameplate value.
Yep.
So if it's a 30 amp motor, then the protection would be in the whatever the value for, or whatever the grounding for that, whatever the wire size for that 30 amp.
So it should give you a minimum circuit ampacity. So your minimum circuit ampacity is for your conductor, and then your maximum overload protection is for your maximum overload. So that in that case, that's why people don't understand. You could have number 12 on a 40 amp breaker.
Sure, you could.
Because you're trying to size that overcurrent device based on the startup of the motor.
Correct.
And so it's not necessarily that is one of the cases where the overcurrent device does not provide overcurrent because the motor is thermally protected. So when the motor is thermally protected, then all the circuit breaker is doing is providing for ground fault protection and short
circuit protection. So so in most instances, is the overload protection already integrated within the motor itself?
So if you go to 240.4G, it'll give you instances where you can exceed the overcurrent device, because those are all the cases. They give you a whole list of cases on 240.4G that tell you where you're able to size that conductor below the value. So let me ask you this, Reese.
Go ahead.
If you take, let's just say you have 10s on a 50. That's my favorite one. So you have 10s on a 50.
Okay.
Now you take those two number 10 wires you got 208 volts, and you have to take those two number 10 wires and you slap them together. Is that overcurrent device going to open? You got two number 10s on a 50 amp breaker, and you touch them together. Is it going to trip the breaker?
It should not.
Yeah, it'll trip the breaker.
Okay. Is it because of the current regardless? Is it because of the current? It's just a current.
It doesn't matter. It's you take those two current. You take
It's
those
a ground.
together.
It's a short circuit or a ground fault.
Yeah. You take that short circuit. That overcurrent device can open. Now let's just say you take those same two number 10 conductors. Let's say you put them on a 100 amp breaker, and you take those two number 10s and you slap them together. Is that 100 amp gonna trip?
Yeah.
Damn straight, it's gonna trip.
Yeah.
So now,
it's a face-to-face short, right?
Yeah. So now you take, let's just say you got a 100 amp breaker. You take one of those number 10s and you take that number 10 to ground. Is that breaker going to trip?
No.
Yes, it will.
It will
trip. That breaker will trip. So that's all the breaker's required to do. So a lot of people think that you have to protect the conductor with the overcurrent device, but you're not always required to do that by the National Electric Code.
That's why when we first talk about the overcurrent protection devices, we explain to you what's a short circuit, what's a ground fault, and what's an overload. And there's a story my dad told back when he was an apprentice.
I love this story.
You'll like this, Reese.
Okay.
They had this kid that he was the instructor. Dad said he was about 6'4", probably about 2 feet. He's a big guy. And this kid up front just thought he knew everything. And he said the instructor was actually having a little bit of problem explaining. And you got to remember, this is back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
And, he's having a little trouble explaining the difference between a short circuit, ground fault, and overload. And this kid told the instructor, he said, I don't think you know what you're talking about. And he said, old man didn't miss a beat. So he just walked over. He said he grabbed some wire off a reel, and he took and stripped both ends, and he walked over and he told the kid, he said, here, hold the end of this wire. And he took his lighter out and lit the other end. And, about 15 seconds go by, he let go of that because that wire got hot. And he said he reached across there and he slapped that kid upside the head. And he said, now that's a short circuit ground fault. He said the other where you were holding on to it was an overload, where the conductor gets too hot and overloaded, that will cause the breaker to trip. Those are your three main functions for your circuit breaker.
Ah.
Yeah,
so that's how you want to remember it.
Okay.
The overload where the wire gets hot is not required to be covered by the breaker all times. Sometimes it is.
The melting, they make the. I'm sorry. Keep going. My apologies. I was studying something about it last night. That's why it's other ways for overload protection other than a breaker or a fuse. Correct?
Yeah. So that's where 240.4D would apply. So like if we were gonna put like let's just say a outlet circuit at the hospital, a lot of those nurses are just gonna put space heaters underneath their desk because they tore the whole wall out yesterday and they're getting ready to put a new door in. So it's cold as hell over there in C Southwest.
Of course.
So they're going and taking these space heaters and they're plugging them in under their desks and not telling anybody. Well, next thing you know, the breaker starts tripping because that's an overload condition. Those breakers are required to trip with that overload condition with those nurses plugging all those space heaters in. That's required. That's required per code. Like, we got to know that. Now, if it's a motor and we're starting up an air compressor and it's powering up that south canopy for our air system, we want that thing to run until it blows up because we don't care. We want that air compressor to just run and run and run for days as long as that system stays aired up, because that's life safety. So stuff like that is when it's life safety, we don't care about the overload. When it's something convenience or something that's basically a safety hazard, as far as something, there is a possibility you could plug 40 amps of power into a 20 amp circuit. So we want that breaker to act as the overload and trip. So from like, when you look at it from like the hospital standpoint, there's certain criteria, like the fire pump. We want to size that fire pump at what, 300%, James?
Well, the fire pump, what's going to happen when you're sizing the overcurrent device for it, that's a whole different deal when you're in Article 695, because you're going to size the breaker based on the locked rotor current. And that's going to be right in compliance with 240.4A. And basically what they're saying, and it's like a magnet circuit also, basically they want that motor to burn up before the breaker trips.
Right. And that's because the survivability of the building, that they want that thing to keep pumping water to try to save the building, try to save lives, try to save property, to try to save whatever they can. Now, what we do on the fire alarm side is we set those heat detectors lower. So like that sprinkler is going to trip at 165. We set those heat detectors at 135. We want to know when those heat detectors trip, we want to know that those heat detectors are tripping for a reason before the sprinkler trips. So it's basically what you call selective coordination. So we're selectively coordinating those devices to trip at a sequence. It's basically like a sequence of operation. We're forcing those devices to operate how we want them to, so that we know when you see Chris Briggs come running around the corner, then you know that one of those heat detectors tripped, and he doesn't want a sprinkler to trip, because you're going to have more problems if that sprinkler trips.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Does that sort of help you understand now about how to go about calculating the motors and where you need to go to get the information?
Yeah, I think my biggest issue was in the midst of trying to answer the question, the different avenues you can go to find the answer could possibly lead you to the wrong one. So I'm trying to figure out, based off keywords, what tables are going to correspond with that in order for me to find the correct answer for the questions that they're asking, which ideally is going to deal with some math and table 247 through 250. I've kind of become aware of the calculation for single phase and three phase full load ampacity motors now, because of the efficiency ratings and the power factors that also goes into that when you're trying to size those wires and things like that. So it's always helpful to know exactly, this table is for this table is for that, because the test they try to trick you with those questions, and it's real easy. They throw a lot of questions in there that doesn't necessarily deal with what you're trying to answer, and that can be tricky sometimes. So I appreciate you being able to just say, fine tune it for me.
All right, now let's take a look at grounding. I'm going to explain something in grounding when you start looking at it. Now,
dude, if you say concrete encased electrode, I'm just kidding.
I'll go ahead and explain all that. But this is what we have taught for a long time, and a lot of instructors that have been in our courses where I've instructed the instructor, they now teach grounding based on these principles. And what we've always told people is anytime that you're sizing on the supply side, you're going to look at table 250.66 and also table 250.102C1. They're basically the same table. They got the same sizing and everything in it. All right. It just got different names for each one. And then when you're on the line side, all your conductors are going to be sized based on the overcurrent device in table 251.22. Okay, that'll be your equipment grounding jumpers, or equipment grounding conductors, your equipment bonding jumpers. All of that is going to be right there in table 250, 122. And then if you're looking at sizing your conductors on the supply side, you're looking at table 250.66, and that's where you pick up your grounding electro conductors, your main bonding jumpers, your grounded conductors. They have to be, well, it depends on what you're doing, but there's a lot of stuff that's listed there, and you're going to do that on the supply side. Okay.
Supply 250, 66, line 250, 122.
250.102C, right?
Yeah, 250.66 and 250.102C1 will be on the supply side. Then everything on the load side is you're going to be looking at table 250.122.
Low. Okay. Yeah.
So what you were talking about the other day, you probably sized on the test off 250.66, and you're supposed to size off 250.102C1 because it's the supply side, but it's on the load side of the service entrance conductors. 250.66 is only for service entrance conductors.
Honestly, my biggest issue was sizing the percentage of the overcurrent protection. Oh, yeah, because when you, just like he was saying earlier, when you have like a squirrel cage or wound motor, and it's an inverse trip breaker, and you have to go, that 250%. But in some exceptions, you can go that 125. And I think it's just about getting into this code book and understanding that in its entirety, and not waiting till I take the test to figure it out. That's basically what it's going to boil down to, because those type of questions, when you're taking the test, you don't have 15 minutes to try to fit. You need to know some key things about, just like he was able to spit it out as fast, I need to be able to find it as fast as he's spitting it out. And that retention is what's going to help me be better at mastering this code book.
Well, I'll tell you, there's not many that'll be able to just spit it out as fast as I do. I've been doing it for so long. I did a thing for NFPA for NEC Live, and people were asking me questions, and I was just making problems up on the fly, saying, go here, and just doing problems out of my head. But the reason I'm able to do that is because I've only edited these books that we have 1,000 times, and looked at the same damn problems and making sure everything's, correct. And I still make mistakes every now and then, but,
we're human. It's a given.
Yeah.
But
and one of the things I noticed, Reese, that you were kind of doing when I was talking to you a little bit, is you were kind of confusing the two different sides. So you're confusing, like, the 250% is the overcurrent protection or the overload protection, and then the 125 is the conductor sizing. So you just have to learn when you're going through it to split them up, because that question is trying to ask you something about like the overcurrent protection or the overload protection, and then you're going 125%, which a lot of people do.
And that's what's messing me up, because if it's 300, if it's 250%, my calculation is gonna automatically be off. And you can't. It's only 4 ounces. It's not an in between.
I always said the problem with the test is they put the wrong answers on there too. So
of course,
even if you go put the wrong answer,
3 times, man.
Yeah. So
well,
I put wrong answers in there to try to get James, and sometimes I can get him sometimes, but I mean, he got Ohio State on the Super Bowl one, which I don't even think Ohio State.
We're not even counting Super Bowl edition questions. That's not code. That's a bunch of crap. What was funny was my second answer was right. I was picking between two, so it wasn't like I was off by a long shot.
50% is better than nothing. It's better than zero.
So as long as James has the right answer, number one on code, he doesn't have to rely on his second answer, to go off of. So
not on code. I'm usually right on those. But one of the things that, because you're asking those questions, I was able to put together when the new online course comes for journeyman and masters. Like when we're teaching motor calculations, you're actually going to be able to take and toggle back between. Like I could have all these slides in a row, and I've got these links that I've created now with inside the program. So if you're sizing the overcurrent device, you come down, there will be a link that'll automatically click you over to where you can size the conductors, and then you can, after you do that, you can go right back to where you started, or go do the maximum, or go do the overload protection. So
Would it
I'm
have
gonna do what?
would it have some type of would it have the code reference to that overload protection so
Oh yeah.
that okay.
Matter of fact, every one of our calculations that we show, and we're the only ones that do it that I know of, is we go step by step, and we'll say, like, I'll give you an example. Say I was sizing that motor just like I did. I would
Okay.
have step one, and I would say, find an amperage of motor, and then I would say 430.6A1 and table 430.250 and 50 horsepower equals 65 amps. Step two, finding percentage for overcurrent protection device. Then I would put 430.52C1 in table 430.52, and then I'd say inverse time circuit breaker equals
250.
250%. And then
Okay.
step three, calculate an amperage, 65 amps times 250% is
250%.
162.5 amps. That's how detailed our calculations are.
Yeah, and what they call that, what the stall cubs call that, Reese, is they call it code loops. So they always add the
Okay.
code loops in there, so you can always backtrack. Like if
Okay.
there's something you don't understand, you could use that code loop. So you could use the code loop to go forward to get the 250%. And then if you miss something and you say, wait, how did I get 250%? You could take that loop back, and then
Okay.
it'll show you the code
Like a
reference
calculator.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
And
Okay.
then the other thing, what I was gonna tell you too, that helped me out a lot, especially taking my NISAT too, was I was putting, like, if there was something, like I do the calculation and then I was like unsure of it, I would take the answer that I was gonna use and put it in the calculation and then calculate it. And if it came out and made sense, then I knew I was right.
Like
So,
reverse it.
yeah. So
Okay.
like they ask, like, what is the answer? Then you say, oh, I think it's like, let's just say you went off 125% and you got like 88 amps. Then you go plug 88 amps in the equation. If it comes out to 25,000, then you know you did something wrong. So
I got you.
it's usually pretty obvious. Like if there's not going to be any answers that are going to be like 10 digits off or something, like the answer is going to be dead nuts if you got it right.
Okay.
Like you're going to get it perfect. It's going to be word for word in the code. The code's
I
going to
got you.
say that exact thing. It's not going to be close. So I have the story about when I took my JW exam way back a million years ago in 2000. And I was like telling myself, I'm like, man, these questions are not going to rattle me. That was the number one thing everyone says. Don't let them rattle you. Just go in there, confidence, and just look at the first question, read it. You don't have to answer it. I mean, now I think you do have to answer all of them before they let you move on. But like I was like, all right, so I'm like, this is cool. Nothing's gonna rattle me. Nothing's gonna bother me. Question number one: what type of cable is not permitted for use in a poultry plant? And I'm like, poultry plant? Yeah. Like right away it got me. I'm like, oh man, I don't know where to find poultry plant in the code. I was like, what?
547.
And so the whole thing was that it rattled me bad. And
Okay.
it took me probably, I'd say, at least 4 to 5 minutes to just get my bearings back and
Okay.
go, okay, let me just skip it for now. Let me just, not like, I'm not going to worry about it. Then later on in my test, I was in agricultural buildings and it said these
And you
such
found
buildings
it.
will include poultry plants. And I was like, there it is.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to go back, fix my answer,
Right.
and so
That
I
happens.
I basically wasted 4 minutes worrying about what a poultry plant is, the definition of a poultry plant. So, it's one of those things that I learned. And, like I say, I got lucky and I passed, but at the same time, it's like, I think the NISAT 2 that I just failed, I think that was like one of the first tests I've ever failed. And I was going in there all cocky, like, oh man, I'm going to nail this. You know what I mean? And I think what happened was I think I did kind of the process wrong. I think I guessed too much and I skipped too many and I had too many to have to go back to. And so a lot of people say you just do passes over and over and over. That's really not great advice. You need to try to at least have a really good educated guess. At least try to get the right answer the first time. Because if you're just going to be like, I'm going to skip 40 questions and then come back and answer 40 questions, then you just wasted all that time going through those 40 questions. So it's almost better, I think, to try to.
Yeah, I took that approach with the master's test. I didn't actually skip any questions. I answered them 1 through 99. I marked a few, but I answered them and just went back and tried to double check them. But the Journeyman test was a heck of a lot easier than this master's test was. I tell you that. But one of your apprentices that actually asked me what was the biggest difference, and I thought the calculations. My Journeyman test, I went in, I took it, I passed it. Most of it was I knew based off my practical knowledge. This master's exam, you gotta know when you installing these systems, these calculations and this math to make sure that you're doing it correctly, and that's essential to your job. So it's one of those steps that it's a hurdle I gotta jump regardless. But at least know now after taking it, those areas, just like you said, the biggest hurdle is trying. Once you try, it's easier, I feel like, because now I know I've already failed. So I mean, what's to fail again? To succeed is what I'm aiming for, but I can't be hurt by something I've already done, which is fail. You know what I mean? So I'm okay with failing, but I'm not okay with just not trying. So I'm a study now. I got these books. I was telling you I got the little exam preparation books, and I'm literally in the Transformers. Finished motors last night. Now I'm in Transformers, learning about that, and I'm gonna just keep going through and working on it, and hopefully, next time you guys have me on the show, I can be that master electrician. I hope.
Well,
that's the goal.
Tell you, when you're looking at transformers, you're going to look at table 450.3A, which is going to be for transformers over 600 volts, and then 450.3A. And I'll tell you, if they ask you something on there, they're either going to ask you about a supervised location or the other we call non-supervised, but in the code it's any location. Now, you have to pay attention, because if they ask you about a supervised location and they don't give you an impedance for the transformer, you're going to use the percentages for any. Okay, but if they give you a transformer rate impedance, and let's just say it's 4.9%, and they tell you to just size the primary protection over 600 volts for a circuit breaker, you're going to see it's going to say 600% there. But the thing that's going to be interesting, there's going to be no note 1 there. And since they're in the note there, you're going to drop down to the next standard size. So you need to learn how to use the tables. Now, the next table you'll look at is table 450.3B, and this is less than 600 volts. And when you get over there, they got 3 different setups you're going to have. You're going to have your transformers that are 9 amps or more, and then you're going to have your transformers that are 2 amps to 9 amps, and they'll tell you when you have those, you take them at 167%, and then anything less than 2 amps will allow you to do it at 300%. But you also have another part that'll go to that, because that's going to be a control transformer. So you would have to look at 430.72C4 that allows you to go up to a maximum size of 500%. Okay. So there's quite a few things you have to look at when you do that. And that's one of the things in our books, we go through and show you all those calculations that you need to look at. And, you know, I remember when I started, my dad told me, if you can learn how to do all the calculations and learn grounding and bonding, he said the rest of it is a breeze other than hazardous locations, which is another subject you have to learn.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like class
Oh,
3D subject.
and
Mhm.
and outdoor outlets. Outdoor outlets are tricky.
Yeah,
We're still trying to figure out where the outlets at.
I don't. It magically exists now. Apparently, it just floats in infinite space. I swear to God,
So on that note, James, I gotta keep bugging you. Do you think you have an official date when you'll have Colorado? Do you think you'll have it by May?
it's looking like it. I'm right now. Matter of fact, I'll pull it up here in a little bit. I'm going to show the new layout that's coming out for everybody to look at. It is kick ass. And
Nice.
soon as I finish, I'm hoping to be done here about mid March, end of March. I'm probably going to be closer to end of March because I've gone in and added a lot more functions, which you're about to see here in a little bit. But
Okay.
the things that I'm adding and the amount of detail and interactivity in the course is unbelievable. But
Nice.
I've been working on a lot. I've written a couple of lines of code and stuff to get it to do a few extra functions, and it really is. It's unbelievable what I've been able to do. The industry has not seen these type of courses before online.
Nice.
So
Well, I took your state of Colorado 24-hour for Colorado for 2020, and dude, I was just blown away. Like the way you put it together. I got through it fast because I had like limited amount of time because we have to assign this thing saying that by September 30th of 2023 we have to have our 24 hours done.
Right.
And I think I did it in probably like 4 days to get done because I'm a procrastinator. But,
no,
I was able to smash through it and get it done. So one thing Reese doesn't know is I got gypped on like 21 code changes for 2020 because he had a code change out and he didn't put all the code changes into Colorado. So I'm trying to see if he's gonna just tell me when I could get those code changes back. You know, he like owes me those code changes back. So
he's full of crap.
Well, no worries. I need to get my CUs actually, so I might be looking into taking your online class myself actually.
Well, let me.
Nice.
I'm gonna pull this up. I'm just gonna show it because I figured out why it wasn't showing the screen last time. But just to give everybody an idea what it looks like. Okay, can y'all see it?
Yes, sir.
Just go full screen on it. You don't need to have us in there.
Okay, this is just when it starts up. I'm just going to enter the course, but I'm going to show y'all some cool features in this. Now, right over here to the left-hand side, I have a floating toggle here. You can go through whatever you want if you just have the course. But in this case, when you get ready to do the state, you won't have this option. You have to go through everything step by step. But this is what it's going to look like. You'll come in, everything that's highlighted in blue and underlined is where a change was made. Okay. Now, as you drop down through this, you're going to have the first, second revision of how the code making panel voted and what their substantiation was. And then you'll have here where we come in and give a synopsis of basically what took place. Okay. Then you come down. And one of the things that we do that nobody else does is we tie in other parts of other standards for additional information that you might want to look at. So if I wanted to look like this illustration, we're talking about the motor branch circuit here. So right here, If I go over here and I click the OSHA, this is going to pull up and take you over here so you can look at the OSHA section, what they say. And then
Okay.
if you're interested, you can subscribe to the NFPA link, which a lot of people are, and you can come over here and have access to the standards. They even have a free trial for you to go through. Okay.
Okay.
Now, check this out. When you come here and you get to the illustration, anywhere on here you see a section, table, whatever. Say I wanted to look at this, and I'm talking about the disconnecting means, for instance. All I have to do is click here, and here's the sections here, and you can scroll through and read the sections and everything, what we're talking about, and then just go back. So everything here is fully interactive for you to follow through and see what information's there. Okay.
And that's what I'm talking about, the code loops, Reese. So each one of those different things that he has out there is your code loops. So if there's something that you don't understand, then you can just go through that code loop, and then it'll bring you back and tell you, like, okay, here's the code loop on the receptacle. Here's the code loop on the motor. Here's the code loop on the disconnect. Here's the code loop on the panel. So everything, it makes you understand all the different sections, how they tie together.
Sure. And then we come down right below that, and we just tell you a basic synopsis of what that illustration's about. And then we also have it with video here. This is, if you don't want to read all that, you can just listen. So as you're going through this, you'll see
and ground fault protective
we show
device
you
and an individual
turn
motor.
off this for a minute. You look here, everything is fully interactive. We have all kinds of transitions and everything. So if I look at the video here, even on this video, as we're explaining, you can click through the sections and everything.
Okay.
And I've never seen that before in any other program that's out there. But everything's very simple to go through, and then you come down here and you get a multiple choice question.
Okay.
That's pretty simple. Now, I'm going to show you something else.
And then the other thing I wanted to say too, if you go back, James, the one thing I like is that multiple choice question that you have is not necessary. It's not just directly based off the reading.
That's
so
right.
You actually have to understand it to know the multiple choice question. It's easy, and you could get it right if you understood the section. So that's what I kind of liked about when you did your Colorado.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, let me show you. There will be some of it where you come in here, and what you're going to notice, like this here, we're talking about GFCI protection. Well, in this cycle, in 210.8, there were a lot of GFCI items that were done. Now, what I did is within the program, let's say these are quick access to other changes that took place. So say I wanted to look at other than dwelling units for sinks, okay? All I have to do is I can look at these links and just click, and look at here, it pops up, takes you right over to it, and you can see the change. Or if I see it and I want to go back to where I originally was, I can click 210.8 and it takes me right back there again. So everything is fully scalable, interactive. Maybe, here we go, outdoor outlets. Well, let's look at outdoor outlets.
I knew you were trying to get it 210.8.
Now, you'll see here's the changes that took place, and everything's highlighted in blue. And then when you come down here, check this out. You come in, and here is the comment, and you'll see we tell you exactly what took place, and we tell you here, I'm going to give you an example. No substantiation was provided by co-making panel 2 to address the location of outlet. Therefore, we feel GFCI protection is not required for an AC unit, EVSE, etc. Even if GFCI protection was required, there are compatibility issues with Class A GFCI device in the AC unit. Co-making panel 2 also stated in their substantiation that utilization was not added as it is more limiting without proper substantiation. Now, that that is the
Yeah.
level of detail. And then we tie it in with all the OSHA stuff. And then you come down here and we show you in a full illustration with all the sections and everything. You just click through it and read whatever you want to read.
So what you have to understand, Reese, is I did do some high level investigation and research on the old outdoor outlet thing. So that's where James got all his all his knowledge from, because we actually went to the code making panel members and got them to explain to us like why they did that, why they thought that. So
the great thing is that gives you an idea of like the inner workings of the course. And
Okay.
basically what I did is I took our publication and put it on steroids is basically what I did. And now if you look, like I was looking at that GFCI, when I get the new Journeyman course that comes out and the masters, you'll be able to toggle back and forth like you were for that GFCI for sizing the overcurrent devices for all the different types, sizing your overload protection, sizing your conductors. All of that's going to be interactive, jumping back and forth, and then all your code loops and everything will be provided for that.
Okay.
And the continuing education will be good all the way till 2026.
Right.
So,
Now, I got a question. Do you not have the exam prep course available yet?
Well, I did for 2020, and our LMS crashed, and we're having to get it back up and running again. And hopefully, we'll have it back up here within a month.
Okay.
Because the new code changes is coming out, and I've been teasing everybody, but I have a huge announcement that's going to come. Bill knows about it, and it is huge.
maybe.
Oh, it's happening.
I might know about it.
But
Okay.
anyway, we're about to have that come back up, and that's the level of detail you're going to be able to study for your exams.
So just so you probably don't know, Reese, but it was kind of like my idea, but I saw James's the way James's learning management is set up, and I was like, hey, do you think we could run a test, like a monthly test, and then just what I mean, just run through it? And so we called it the NEC Death Match, and so it comes through James's learning management program. So we're gonna have it up probably by like the end of March, and probably to start for the first week of April probably. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna post a 24 question test, and then it's free, doesn't cost you anything. You just add deathmatch to your cart in James's learning management plan, and it says free, add to cart free, and then they'll enter you in the deathmatch, and then the highest score after 9 months, was it?
9 months.
After 9 months is $1,000 cash.
Okay.
And so there's a few people we're gonna have to figure out, because I know one of the guys was saying he got 100%, and he didn't hear nothing back. So if you guys reach out to us, we'll figure it out. We might have to do it for like a tiebreaker, because I know I had a 95% this time. So like.
They're fun.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
You ready to do the 5 changes this week?
Let's do it, brother.
All right. Now, believe it or not, next week may be the end of it, but we're getting close now. But one of the things that we got here for these changes, we are in chapter 7. And what they did here in the first change for this week is they added a new part 3 for interconnected systems operating in an island mode. And basically, they come in and talk about the power source capacity, the voltage and frequency control, And if you have a single 120 volt supply, they just put a few things in here to let you know you got to have a warning on there and everything, and the warning signs or labels. They have to comply with 110.21b. So basically, if it's a warning, that means it's got to be what? Orange in color. So
Yes, sir.
they just put a couple of things in here just to address these systems where they're operating in island mode. That's all they did, and put a few requirements for the warning signs and everything else.
So is that island mode? Is that defined? Does that mean that it's not standalone and it's not 100% on the grid? It has grid and like it's basically like a hybrid mode.
Yeah,
Or what is the island mode?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I don't want to say for sure because
I think that island mode means that it's kind of like a standalone, but it still has a grid.
The reason
Grid
I say
power.
I'm not sure how they classify it, because we do have where we look at other systems and they do say standalone. So I don't want to
Right.
call it standalone.
It's not.
It's not, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know how they classify an island mode for this, but it's not standalone. I can tell you that, because other parts of the code they specifically say standalone. So this is something, it's I sort of look at it. It's sort of like isolated, is what I'm thinking.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
that's what I think.
That makes sense.
Don't hold me to it, but
all right.
If I'm looking at
dude, I'm not the ECD boys, dude. You're attacking the wrong people here, man. Come on.
Well,
it's all good.
If I'm not 100% sure, I'll say so, and I'm not 100% sure what, because if I remember right, remember reading this change, and there was no clarification just what exactly was an island mode. I don't remember that.
Is island mode defined in Article 100?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I'll go back and look. I'll answer that next week to be sure, but I'm just not 100% sure on that one.
Okay. All right.
And then they added a new article here, and this is Article 722, and this is to help address the cables for our power limited circuits and fault management circuit and optical fiber. Okay. And I'm not going to go through all of this that they're talking about, but that's what this is about. It's just these type of cables for these type of circuits, and therefore these are going to be the rules that you're going to look at. And what's interesting about it is they have a part 1, but there's no part 2, part 3, or anything. So I have a feeling that they're going to separate this eventually, and they're going to come back and they're going to add some more rules to this, is what I think is going to happen. Okay. And then this you got to pay attention to. Now, what took place here, it's not so much the rules changed. Okay. But what they did is Article 725 is where we used to pick up Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 circuits. Now you're going to have 3 different articles. And Article 724 is going to deal with Class 1 power limited circuits and power limited remote control and signaling circuits. And then you'll have your Class 2 and Class 3. And then Article 726 is going to deal with your Class 4 circuits.
Right.
Okay. So it's not so much there's a change here.
Is 726 a totally new section?
Yes.
Okay.
And if you remember, we've already gone over, they got a new definition for a Class 4 circuit. And then remember, there was some stuff that was put in that we were looking at in Article 220 concerning Class 4 circuits. So it's sort of like a combination of everything.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So it's not so much a change here. It's just a new article that they've added here to address the Class 1 circuits that they pulled out of Article 725. Okay. And then Article 726 is what? Class 4.
Yes, sir.
These are going to be your fault managed power systems And then you're going to come down and you're going to look at this, and these are going to be the rules that are going to concern this. And there's two parts to this. Okay. You've got your general requirements, and then they talk about the class 4 circuit itself in part 2. And that's where you get into the different type of loads, the marking, your terminals and connectors and stuff. Okay.
So I have a question about that.
Mhm.
So when you get into that fault managed, is that like how they're coming out with the new style breakers that have like different trip settings where you can actually you can run them wirelessly, or you can, because I know that there's 3 different style breakers. You got a thermal mag, then you have like all the different style breakers, and I think this one's called like a digital breaker, possibly.
From my understanding, that's correct. And if you remember when we were looking at class 4 circuits, the definition, they go in and talk about all of that. And if you remember, that was one of the first that we did when we first started doing these 5 changes. And they were very specific. And there was if you remember, when I had the video I did, I actually posted this on a couple of the groups. And there was on my video, there were 3 pages of audio that we go through that the code making panel gave very specific language to address the different type of class 4 circuits. And it gets in talking about the terminals, the connectors, the modules, and everything. It's all broken down there.
Nice.
So
yeah, that was a really good post you did.
This here, you really need to look at the definition in Article 100 to tie this in.
Nice. Okay. Yep.
And then the last one we had, well, that's still part of Article 726. Then we get into Chapter 8, and we're almost done with all this. And they added a new subsection here to address the vertical installations for your circuit integrity, which is your CI cables. And these are where these cables and conductors are installed in raceway, are conductors and cables of fire-resistant cable systems. Okay, and they tell you when you're installing these type of fire-resistant cables or conductors that you have to install them in accordance with Section 300.19. Okay.
Nice. No, good job, dude. That was you got us through them real quick. So one thing I wanted to tell you, Reese. This is something that kind of hit home. We're going to have to do this as a myth too, James. Are you required to remove demoed electrical wiring and cabling?
Am I required?
Code. Like if you're like, we're going in PBH, we're remodeling. Are we required to remove every single piece of unused electrical equipment in that hospital?
No.
So
we're gonna make it safe.
So
you
we're
make
not
it electrically safe. Now, I'm not for PVH. I mean, for PVH we have specs to which we have to demo it back to a certain point, and then take it further from that point, or make it electrically safe, or however I don't deal with the power. I'm mechanical, but but I would. That'll be a stop question. I don't know the answer to that one.
So, honestly, we do not have to remove anything electrical. We do not have to demo anything electrical. We have to make it safe, free from hazard. The only thing we have to remove is based on Chapter 8,
abandoned
data
cable
system. Yep. So we cannot abandon data cables. We cannot abandon fire alarm cables. We cannot abandon data cables. So there's a reason, and this came from fire safety. This happened back in the 70s. There was a fire in like the mailroom in like a high-rise building. They had a bunch of abandoned data cables. Somehow those data cables transferred the fire from the mailroom on first floor all the way to like the 36th floor.
Wow.
So that's why they do that. That's based on our fire code. That's the whole reason why they get freaked out when they see holes in drywall with data cables going through them, because that data cable, just like James was talking about, lighting that lighter on that conductor and then it heating up and burning that kid.
Right.
Then that's the same concept. What happens with those data cables is you get that fire, and that'll actually transfer a fire from one part of the building to the other. So that's the whole purpose behind actually demoing all those data cables, to get them out of there so that you don't have a transfer of heat from one side of the building to the other.
Fire hazard.
And, yeah, and it's the same thing with fire alarm cable, but it doesn't have as much of an impact as like the data cabling, because the data cabling is like ran like a huge trunk line. It's just like if you think of like Snoop Dogg hitting a big blunt, you know what I mean? Like that big blunt's gonna start a big fire, you know what I mean? So
I got
you
you.
know,
It makes
just like
sense.
that. Yeah.
You know what
But-
the first words are that a person learns when he's smoking weed, don't you?
420.
Here.
Dude, I only tried it one time, man.
All
Only tried it once.
right, you ready?
I
for your tool?
didn't even inhale.
I did to go back to your code changes. Number one, island mode is in Article 100. Just
Is it?
if you wanted to go and check that out, it is in there.
Yeah,
Okay, I
rattle it
wasn't
off.
sure. I don't really
Read it.
deal with that
Read it.
kind of stuff
Read it to
much
us.
anymore.
Read it.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Island mode, the operational mode of standalone power production equipment or an isolated microgrid, or for, sir,
Isolated. That's what I said. I would.
No,
assume
just keep
that's an
reading. No, you're
isolated.
good.
isolated microgrid, or for a multi-mode inverter, or for interconnected microgrid that is disconnected from an electrical power production and distribution network or other primary power source.
That's
Pretty
what
much
that's
what I
what
thought.
separates it. That's what separates it from standalone.
Yeah, that's what I said. To me, that would mean if it's island, it's isolated. That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I always try to stump James, but you know, like sometimes
It don't work out.
That's okay.
It's
I'm used
okay.
to it. All right, you ready for your tool, brother?
Yep, let's do it.
It's time for Tool Review of the Week. Sponsored by Electricians Only Tool Review and Nipex Tradesman.
All right, so I really appreciate one of the listeners of the podcast told me about this. They have this on sale right now at Home Depot for $79.99. But it's pretty cool little thing to have. I'm actually thinking about going to get me one. You get this brand new. I'm not sure if it's just tool only, but they have a online code. I do a lot of the glitches. So sometimes what you can do is you could go on to like say Home Depot's website, and they'll say if you buy one tool, then you get another tool free. They could say you could just buy the batteries and then you get the tool free. So that's what I did at one point in time. I went and I bought a 2-pack of batteries and they gave me a free tool. So I basically got the batteries. I already had the charger and I got a free tool and 2 batteries. So I basically just bought the batteries and I got a free tool. So some of that stuff you could take advantage of. And then what we ran into, I post them on the Electricians Only Tool Review group, is sometimes we'll run into these glitches where if you put in the batteries, then it'll give you a double discount. And so they'll have like little glitches in Home Depot, and I'll try to let you guys know when we run across those glitches. The guy that runs across them is a guy named Jeff Ostroff, and he's on YouTube. So if you search Jeff Ostroff and hit his notifications, anytime some of these glitches come across, then you'll see him. So basically, when those come across, let's just say you buy the batteries for $79.99, then the tool is free. So you basically got 2 batteries and a tool for $79.99. So that's what we try to do. And like I say, I haven't used this tool yet, so I can't really say how good it works. But I would say that this is probably a good tool. Reese knows that we've been out in gas and oil before, and I always bring my torch around. And you're not really supposed to be running around with the torch out in gas and oil.
Not
So,
at all. No, no, Bill. That's not a good thing.
Yeah, you might not even want to be running around with a heat gun either, but it's just one of those things that probably works good for like when we're in some of those control buildings and we gotta do a bunch of heat shrink to get our labels on there and get our stuff finalized. I got a good story for you, Reese, about this. We were doing one of our cabinets over there at Schmucker's, and your boy, and I'm not going to mention his name, he went and heat shrink on there, and it only covered like maybe 50% of the terminal. So there was, and you know, I was just like, why would you do that? Why would you heat shrink it? Just only cover like there's still all this metal hanging off there. I was like, you should make it look like the rest of that cabinet, you know, like. And so we ended up having to cut your boy's stuff all apart and get it redone and stuff. But I would have been happy to have that DeWalt heat gun to go back and redo some big-headed fourth year that don't listen to instructions.
No, they look like it'll work pretty good on some cables too. You know, when you terminate those fan motors out there on those oil and gas sites, and you gotta ground it to the actual motor and stripping that installation off in like 15 degrees. It's just horrible, Bill. So those help get that installation off pretty good. I
agree. Yeah, it's always nice to have those heat guns, and especially with the 20 volt. I've rarely seen a time when, like, I can't even tell you the last time I charged a DeWalt battery. Like, like my weed eater lasted like the whole entire season last season, all the way through. I might have charged it one time. You know, like their batteries just last forever. So it's pretty awesome. And so just so you know, Reese, every week I do like one DeWalt, one Milwaukee. I don't hate red. I mean, I don't passionately hate red. I don't, you know.
Well, you know, I got Milwaukee everything, Bill. So you gotta what tool you got this week?
Well, for coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a suggestion. Last week I did Milwaukee, the little baby impact, the little what is it? I think it's the 18 volt or the 12 volt. Yeah, it's the 12 volt little impact. I like those little baby Milwaukee impacts.
Yeah, they got a surge version one now that they make for the 12 volt that's is real nice. It's like their have you ever used the 18 volt surge in Milwaukee impact?
No,
it's just a quieter, more torqued version of the regular Milwaukee impact, and then they just created a 12 volt of the 18 surge, which don't have that one yet, but I will be going to obtain that here shortly. But if I had a tool, I would suggest it would be the bandsaw, the Milwaukee mid-size, mid-compact 12 volt bandsaw. That's my favorite tool.
So I don't know if you know this, but I actually covered the DeWalt one that you got.
the subcompact.
Yeah, I never even seen that one before.
It's heavy though. It's heavy. If I had to choose between the two, I would definitely go Milwaukee only because of the lightness of it. It's just lighter for the wrist. I mean,
We'll get a little battle going, and we'll do the Milwaukee next week. That's cool.
Okay. No worries. Well, I could put them both in your hand at work, and you're gonna be like, okay, I understand.
Right. Yeah, let's do it. I'll even do a comparison, like how they cut and different stuff like that.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you showing up, and it's really awesome, Reese, to have you, and it's really cool to have all kinds of cool people on the job site, and just having you and Rolos and everyone in there. It's just a bunch of fun.
Hey man, I love what I do.
Did we have any other slides up, James? Might have been a slide left in there. I don't know.
Oh God, let's see what he's got for this week.
Stump the stalk up. Oh, here we go.
Let's see what you did. What is?
I gotta confess. I told Reese the question already.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
What is the maximum? The one-off.
But you said 4 current carrying. You didn't say 3 because remember at 4 you got to derate, remember we was discussing that earlier.
Yeah, it sure kind of looks like it's saying what's the current carrying capacity of one THW conductor installed in a common raceway with 3 other current carrying conductors. So that would mean 4.
What is the current carrying? A1?
It's a trick question because what it's saying is what is the maximum current carrying capacity? It's of the one-off. So he's basically, but I guess this come from a test or something.
Yeah, it came from the Colorado exam.
Okay, so they're basically saying that they want to know the current carrying capacity of that one-off with 3 other current carrying conductors. So you got 4 current carrying conductors. So you're going to look at, first of all, you're going to look at table 310.16. That'll be 150 amps for the conductor. And then I'm going to look at table 310.15 C1 for the current carrying conductors, and that's going to give you 80%. So you'll take the 150 amps for 4 to 6 conductors is 80%. So you'll take the 150 amps at 80%, and that'll give you 120 amps, which is D. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You got it. You nailed it. Ding, 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 ding. Did not stump the stall cups. A lot of people answered A. And like I could maybe give them like half points because you know what I mean. It was kind of a trick question, and everyone always says, "Well, if I calculate it at 150 amps, like what's the difference?" And I say, "Wrong answer on a master exam."
Did some of them complain saying there were only 3 current carrying conductors?
Yeah, they basically gave two calculations, which the thing is that I didn't really see anything really wrong with it too bad because it says that it's 1 current carrying conductor installed with 3 other current carrying conductors. So I seen it as a kind of a clever trick question, not necessarily unnecessarily deviating you.
If I was taking a test, I would have assumed they were wanting 4 current carrying conductors. That's why I had to reread it twice. I was like, what the hell is he asking here?
Right. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so Reese, that's another thing that they try to do on like when you're taking like the master exam is they'll try to show you like 3 current carrying conductors in there, and then you just see that as a sight thing, and you're like, oh, I don't have to derate.
Right. Because, I mean, you add the 1.
Yeah, but then you add 1 more. Now you got to derate by 80%. So you're going to have 150 amps as one of the answers. So you're like, okay, I just look at 210 or I just look at 310.16, and it says 150 on the 75 degree C. You think you're done, and you think you got the right answer. But when in all actuality, the test's actually trying to get you to factor in that 80%.
Yeah, so, that word is just everything on that test, though. You gotta know what they're asking you. I mean, but
I knew James would do a good job at breaking it down, but like I think I'm gonna have to do like 1 easy one and 1 hard one, so I could get him on the easy one while he's looking for the hard one. Like
I don't think you can find no hard questions for him though, Bill. I don't think it don't seem like
he's trying to come after me. He's starting the Willie quiz pretty quick, like in the next week or so.
Freaking asking me all these screwed up questions.
when he starts the Willie quiz, what he's gonna do is he's gonna do some questions from the death match, and it could be a bunch of already previous questions that he's already ran in the death match. It could be whatever questions that whatever out. So how many questions do you have in your journeymans?
For the Journeyman, there's 750 questions. The Masters, there's 1,000.
So he could pull any of one of those questions out of there, like 1,000 questions he has to choose from, and then put them in 5-question format, and then just have like everyone in the live stream just like try to answer them or whatever. But in all actuality, it's probably going to start out just me and him, because there might not be anybody in the chat. But if there is, you know what I mean, then whatever. I guarantee I'll get a 95% or better.
Okay.
He's only stumped me like 5% of the time. So you know what I mean? I've weathered the storm, but see, I stumped him on the Super Bowl. He only went 1 for 5 on the Super Bowl. So now he's out for revenge on me because he got stumped on the Super Bowl. And see, then he's going to be like, when I get the wrong answer, he's like, all right, well, what is your second answer then, Bill? And so,
you got a second chance, though, Bill.
Yeah. And then what I could do is I could parade all around after I get the second answer and be like, I got all the second answers.
Hey.
I got 100% second answers.
Tries what matter, because if you were stuck with the first answer, Bill, you just wrong. You gotta. It's all about trying, man.
Yeah.
You haven't seen some of our master questions. You might not get it on the second one. Even they're tough, boy. I mean,
no. Send me some. I need some practice questions outside of this Mike Hope book I'm using. I take any direction of questions I can get if it's gonna help me be better. I'll take them.
Okay. Yeah, we'll send you over question bank.
There's a problem. You should be using Stalk Up, not Hope.
See, I do know that now. See, I didn't know that before, so now that I know, I can do better.
There's a saying that used to go around. They say, people that don't know use Hope. People that know use Stalk Up.
Uh-huh. Now I know.
Hey, did I ever tell you, Reese, about remember you have the 2020 handbook, and I pulled out that Nika thing where it said that 110.12 was the most cited code by AHJ or whatever.
All right.
Like those things are just like opinions that's added into the handbook. But when you look at the actual language, you notice when they do it like a code change, like the one that I got James on last week, where it says must be installed in a professional and skillful manner, that will be in gray print in the 2023.
Okay.
Because that's actually changed language. You know where that started? Started at the Stall Cups. Stall Cups started that to where the code change was actually in gray. Dark gray, so you could see that the language was changed at where it was changed at.
Well, what we used to do,
like that in my 2020 handbook. Remember I was telling you it's gray, but it has the little note.
Yeah, they're the ones that started that.
Well, we didn't actually shade it. We had it in red, showing the change in our books. We were the first to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, the Stalk Ups don't have any original ideas, though.
I would find that very hard to believe based off of what I just learned in the past hour and 45 minutes.
No, that's really awesome. I appreciate you joining us, and I hope you had a good time. I hope you had fun. Like we like to make learning fun. That's what I like to do. That's the whole point of me doing Nat King Code, and I'm glad that you learned my favorite term, Google me, bitch. That's awesome. And
oh yeah, I'm taking that one, Bill. That one's to go on with me wherever I go. You don't have to worry about that.
All right. That's
but
good.
It's been an honor, though. I'm just honored that you guys, you gentlemen, just want to discuss the trade with me. I love it. I talk about it anytime, all the time, and anytime in the future you'd like to have me on again, I'm with it.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the knowledge. I thank you for it. Mr. James, I really appreciate everything that you was able to brain dump on me right then. I took as much of it as I could down. I got some studying to go do when we get done, but I really, really appreciate it.
I am
and I
pretty
think
fast when I'm teaching that stuff.
I got it though. I'm quick with the pen, I'm quick with it.
I think I try to like slow him down because he gets a little fast, but the whole thing is it's hard for me to explain some of the things the way he explains it. He explains it way better than me, so it's really cool to be like that kind of teacher that like James, or he can just rattle it off, and you know what I mean. I could slow him down and just say, "Dude, what the hell is island mode? Come on,
right."
man.
Well, and now I just learned a new definition and articles, but then at the same time, there's nothing wrong with asking what he say again. Because if I rather ask him to repeat himself than miss it. You know what I mean? This is valuable information for me right now. So don't worry.
Yeah, and you realize you just got James on island mode, right?
Hey, I just got the code book right here, so I just looked it up while I was writing.
Got the teacher tonight, James. Come on, man.
No, never that. I'm not there yet, Bill. You got it. I'm not there yet at all.
He just likes to bust on me. That's all right.
Bill likes to. Yeah, he's the walking code book at work, so I can believe it. I can believe it.
And if he doesn't know at work, he freaking texts me, "Hey, what's the answer to this?"
Well, you're not a bad person to have in the pockets, though, Mr. James. I would not say that at all.
And Bill knows I've said this before. I've stated I don't know everything about the code, and if there's something I don't know, I know who to call. That's on that particular panel, or he's an expert in that field, and I have no problem calling somebody to get a definitive answer on something if I'm unsure. And I'll tell you something that I learned a long time ago. My dad taught me this. He said, when they're asking a question, if you don't know, he said, don't bullshit them. He said, you tell them I don't know, but I'll find out. And that's like at island mode. I said, I'm not 100% sure because I don't really deal with that. And, I said, this is what I think, but I'll have to do some research to check. And as Bill will tell you, we've done myths and stuff, and I provided information on some of them myths that people have never even seen. But I actually went back and did the research because, Bill asked me something. I go, I'm not sure on that. I know what the answer is, but I think there's some other things we need to look at that people are not aware of. And I'll expand on those myths and give even more detailed information on stuff they need to look at where I correlate it with other standards. And that is the difference on this podcast is I hadn't seen any podcasts where they go to that type of detail and have a structure to show everything on screen so you know what you're looking at.
Yeah, that definitely helps being a visual learner myself. And all people don't learn the same, but me being a visual learner and understander, that will be essential to me retaining the information.
And I'll tell you something, if you'll go back and look at some of our other podcasts, just become a member of the YouTube channel for Vote Online Academy. And I actually cover motor calculations for sizing the overcurrent device and also for transformers. So you can go back and look at that. And I have illustrations that show you step by step how I did it.
Okay.
I was telling her about Pops doing the 7 steps to motor design. That was one of our better episodes.
Oh, yeah.
He just rattled right through 7 steps of motor design. So that gives you the why. Why do you do this one? Why do you do that one? Why do you do this one? Why do you do the overcurrent like this? Why do you do the conductor like this? Why do you do that? His Pops rolled through it like fast. And the other thing I was going to tell you too is the only reason I call you is because I don't have a freaking illustration for my myth of the week, and you won't answer it. I'm like, dude, I need to drop this, and the ECD boys are gonna tear me up.
You kept bugging me. I will get it. I'm freaking swamped right now. I mean, I got so much crap going on. And finally, I got it, and I sent it to him late last night, about 10 o'clock, because I finally got home, and I said, "Here it is." I said, "What do you think?" And he posted up, and it's a really good looking illustration. So,
dude, it was 100% crickets.
I know
the ECD boys just shut up after that. So it was like, oh, that didn't even work. Wasn't even worth it.
Well,
so I apologize. Yeah, they just shut up. They're gone.
Well, what'd they say? What's the matter? Stalk Up doesn't have an illustration on it, and I'm like, you got to freaking be kidding me. We got I only got like 2,500 illustrations. I mean, I probably have more than that. I mean, shoot, I can pull from anything.
Yep. It was awesome. Like the first time I ever talked to James, I'm like, dude, I want to take like your Colorado course and da da da, and he's like, oh well, yeah, here's Colorado course and everything, and then I went and I did it and everything, and then he put out a code change publication, and then I noticed that the code change publication had slightly more code changes than what the Colorado did. And I was like, wait a minute, mister. I was like, you owe me some code changes. I was like, why did you slip these? Where did these other code changes come from? And you're like, Bill, calm down. That's in a different package. You got to pay. You only paid $125. You got to pay the extra $25 if you want those code changes. And I was just like, what? I was like, this is. I was just so mad. And
you got to pay for that knowledge, man.
Yeah, eventually.
With the state,
eventually I'll get my code
hours, and that's what I had in there.
So eventually, I'm gonna figure out how I could just like sneak little illustrations here and there, and then I could get all my code changes back. Like it's gonna be. It's like sneaking. It's like the One Piece at a Time by ZZ Top. You have to like sneak the Cadillac out of the Cadillac factory, and like. It might be a 1967, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72. But I'm going to get all my code changes back, and I'm going to have them all on my hard drive, and I'll have those extra 20 code changes.
I do got a question for you. What do you think of the new layout compared to what it was?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's freaking awesome. Like every time I see it, it's like even better than the last one. Yeah. And so what happened, Reese, I was going to tell you too, is James used to have like an avatar where he would like speak in like a microphone or something, and it would do it like whatever. But now he has an avatar where it speaks like Willie Jackerson, and it's like, you look at code 24022. And it does it like all professional, like, because like before it was like, well, you look over at that motor.
Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. It's different souls, man. Different souls. There's people in all parts of this country that could possibly relate to that. Either or.
We had a full studio built, and I used to go in and do recording and stuff. But the reason I got away from it because the video, when people are updating the course, it takes too long to load. And if I do it with a voiceover, I can compact it and it loads real quick. So you don't have to wait. But I actually enjoyed being in the studio because I could run through, 50 changes in a day, and go through it and everything. And within, a week, I've already shot all the video. But with the voiceover, it's more professional, and I can actually think about any extra things I want to say in that video. So it does make a difference.
I can see that.
But anyway, we're coming on 2 hours, brother. We better wrap this sucker up.
No, it's all good. Thanks for joining us, Reese, and appreciate you. And hopefully you can follow us. And then if you have any questions, you can always put them in the chat anytime. And come on, you don't have to just come on with us live. You could always just jump in the chat and say what's up. And like
I'm gonna be on next week regardless. I got you. I'm gonna be in the chat once I'll make sure you'll be probably one of the first ones that know once I pass this master test anyway, because I gotta come back
All
on.
right.
I gotta come back on
All
and tell you how
Yeah.
that went.
All
Oh
right.
yeah, we'll have
Yeah.
it back on. Yeah, we recognize everybody that's taking it and all of that, and they come on, they tell us, hell yeah, we recognize everybody because
I appreciate it.
it's a especially to pass the masters. That's a big accomplishment. Hell, I know
That is.
many engineers that go to take the masters, they can't pass it.
Well, I'm plus 50 percentile, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
So I got a 20% margin. I gotta figure out, which is those calculations, and that's what I'm hitting hard on right now.
You'll get it.
I hope so. I'm trying to be an
Yep.
engineer, so I'm reversed it. I got this first to be an engineer instead of being an engineer and getting a master's card.
Right.
Yep. Well, awesome. Thanks for everyone for joining us tonight. We had an awesome show. It was a great time, and hope you all enjoyed it. And remember, make every day an easy day.
Amen. Everybody
yeah.
have a good week and a good weekend. We'll see y'all next Thursday.
Thank you for having me on, fellas.
You bet, love.
Deuces.
Thank you.